So every year, one of my favorite things to do in preparing for this conference is to put together my thoughts on the state of pro bono. It gives me the opportunity for at least a few minutes to step back, take a breath, and think about what's gone on in the past year. And in the past, I've talked about that, the state of pro bono and where we're at and where we're going on my own. I've looked at trends and issues and problems. But this year, the justice system faces a crisis of untold proportions. Legal aid, administrative agencies, public interest groups, the courts, and ultimately, the vitality of the rule of law are in crisis and in danger. And so to put this year in perspective, I've asked two thoughtful champions of justice to brief us on where we are, and I'll focus my remarks more on where we should be going. They are John Asher, who is the head of Colorado Legal Services, and my legal services rabbi, and Justice Laurie Zelon of the California Court of Appeals, without whom Pro Bono Institute and a lot of pro bono simply would not exist. Laurie?
With that introduction, I think I'll not say anything. The courts across the country, right now the state courts, but coming down the road in just a little bit, the federal courts, have been facing unprecedented cuts in budget. In California, in over a 2-year period, we lost $500 million in ongoing funding and another $500 million in what are euphemistically called one-term cuts. That's $1.1 billion from the courts. And the legislatures think that we can just carry on. There is, I think, a belief that we are another state agency that is common across the country and that the courts play no special role, and that if the lines are longer at the courts, it's just like the DMV and people will just wait a little longer. The reality for the courts is that cuts of that magnitude, which are to some degree, some more than others in every state in the country, mean layoffs of court employees, furloughs of court employees, and cuts in clerk's offices' hours. Fewer services to litigants, longer lines, delayed hearings and trials. And this affects people who go in to pay a traffic ticket. It affects people who want to determine the proper custody of their child. It affects people who need DV restraining orders and can't get them. And it affects people who try long cause, complex civil cases, because if courtrooms are closed, criminal cases will have priority, and the number of judges in courtrooms available to try civil trials will be diminished. So we're not just talking about the people who need pro bono services. We're not just talking about the people who are in there trying to do it by themselves. We are talking about everyone's clients. And more than that, we are talking about what the justice system means, because if there is a view, and there appears to be in some places, that justice is optional, that justice is a luxury, it's something we can do without in hard times, then we all, judges, the bar, legal services, and all of us are in a great deal of trouble. So we're faced with the burden of trying to make both the public and the legislature understand why having a functional justice system matters. In California, we held 4 days of hearings around the state and had people come in and talk to us. And we heard a story from a woman whose boyfriend was abusive. She went on Friday to get a domestic violence restraining order. The lines were so long that they couldn't get to her, and they told her to come back Monday. Her boyfriend had taken the car. She was with their child, and she was afraid to go back home. So she spent the weekend in a shelter, lost 2 days of income, and all because the lines were too long. That matters. For the legislature, they need to understand that they can pass all the laws in the world, but if there isn't a functioning justice system, who is going to enforce them? At the same hearings, we heard from the Chamber of Commerce, who brought in people that said, we're concerned about people entering contracts that we can't enforce. We're concerned that we can't get dispute resolution, we can't get into court, and we can't get things resolved. For those people who litigate civil cases, this isn't usually the problem, but I can tell you that for people who litigate custody cases, the inability to resolve it can lead to a tragic result and sometimes to death. So this is serious, and we need to make people understand that this is serious. We need to look at things together as a community, like re-engineering and simplification. The lawyers who are in the courtrooms every day understand what the processes are, what's wrong, what's right, and what could be done better. The courts are now open in a way that they have never been before to working with the bar in figuring out how to make the system more effective and more efficient. Also, it's time to integrate the resources in a community. Not just the bar, not just the judges, the social services people, and everyone else who works with the people who need help to design and manage procedures so that people get the help they need, so that when they do come into court, they can use their time efficiently and court time is available for everyone and there are fewer delays. I think this is very much in our hands, all of us, and I think that this conference is an opportunity to think about the call to action that this represents. And I read a quote the other day that I want to leave you with. It's from Elie Wiesel, who said, "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. This is the time."
Thank you, Laurie. John?
Good morning. Let me first thank Esther for the opportunity to share the current pain of legal services with all of you. Esther and I go back a long way. I was reminded at the airport in Denver yesterday, I saw a card which said that a friend is somebody who knows you really well and still likes you. And I know that Esther and I go back a long way, and despite knowing me very well, I appreciate her invitation to share just a few thoughts on the current state of legal services with you. Let me start by saying Mark Twain said that to do good is noble, to advise others to do good is also noble and much less trouble for yourself. So I guess we now call it a takeaway, but to cut to the chase, I implore you to do even more good in the days ahead. We in legal services have faced serious challenges in the past to our funding, to our institutional integrity, but we have never faced as serious a challenge, in my estimation, as we do today. Federal funding for the Legal Services Corporation has dropped over the past 2 years from a congressional appropriation of $404 million to last year of $404 million, and this year to $348 million. In Colorado, what was a grant of somewhat over $4 million is down by almost $800,000. State budgets, as Judge Zelon said, are still in very serious trouble, and it has impacted funding to legal services as well as the entire justice system. And IOLTA, interest on lawyer trust accounts, has almost dropped to nothing and won't rise at least until late 2014. One large national bank, for example, informed the Colorado IOLTA program just a month ago that its interest rates on large balance accounts, those over $100,000, would go down from 0.25% to 0.2%. So in Colorado, that means we have gone from an IOLTA grant of $2.4 million to 1.2 million, and next year it'll drop even further. Never have the variety of funding sources been hit at the same time as they have been now. We have gone from a staff of 111 to less than 100, but as I said, we have faced difficult times before, and we will together, I think, weather this storm as well. I don't accept the notion, as Laurie doesn't either, that justice is simply something we can't afford. But never, therefore, has pro bono been more important and the support of the private bar more important than it is both to legal services and public interest programs today. James Sandman, president of the Legal Services Corporation, has frequently and eloquently pointed out that legal services is an example of a public-private partnership. We're currently seeing an ebb on the public side, so we must increase the private side of the equation while not letting the public side drop away further when possible, to try to regain a better equilibrium. But what I believe we need is a balance, maybe a transformative, transformational approach, focusing on broader issues, systemic advocacy, and institutional support for programs by pro bono lawyers and pro bono programs, transactional work, and increased efforts to meet individual client needs. It's critical to expand our efforts in all of these areas. The great philosopher of my youth, Pogo, said that we're confronted by insurmountable opportunities. Well, together we can see the challenges as opportunities, although I must admit I get a little tired of all these opportunities, but I absolutely believe that together we can meet them. Never have our efforts together meant more to legal services programs and the clients who without your help will go unserved. Never, do I believe, have we been better positioned collectively, collaboratively, to meet the challenge and capitalize on the present opportunities and the great need. Thank you.